Before the show, I want to take a quick minute and shout out another local business here in Charlotte, North Carolina. Again, this is not a sponsored ad. This is just a feature, something I want to do to promote one of the many businesses in my city. For this episode, I am going to feature my favorite spot for beer, food, and fun, Legion Brewing. This was also a spot that was close by when I first got to Charlotte. The vibe at Legion is amazing and the staff is so friendly and helpful. The beer tastes amazing too, so if you live in the Charlotte area, please consider stopping by Legion, and you can also buy their canned beer at a grocery store, which would also support the brewery. Now, it's on to the show. Hey everyone, I just want to take a minute to tell you about my Amazon #1 best-selling book, Culture of Excellence. How do culture and leadership impact the performance of a team? For the past 30 years, one organization in baseball has stood taller than all of the rest, the New York Yankees. In Culture of Excellence, Colin, that's me, takes us inside baseball's most successful franchise to uncover compelling and useful lessons in leadership. Culture of Excellence is transformative in its premise. It shares strategies you will want to apply and knowledge you can acquire to effectively improve your team and motivate your people. With 3 foundational pillars, you can become a more effective leader and build a culture of excellence through stories from the Yankees. And you can purchase your copy of Culture of Excellence from any online retailer. There are hard copy, ebook, and audiobook versions available. You can also purchase a hard copy of the book directly from me, and I will personalize it for you and send you swag items like a bookmark and a sticker. Head over to www.talent409.com/culture-of-excellence to view all of your options and learn how you can discover your talent altitude through my book, Culture of Excellence. All right, everyone, welcome back to another very special edition of the Dynamic Leaders Podcast. We're doing another coaching call on today's episode, and I have Natalie here with me who's going to introduce herself here in just a second for everyone listening. Obviously, again, this is a podcast episode, but as with Danny's podcast and with any other podcasts that are coming after this, we're trying to replicate the one-on-one experience, but give you listeners an opportunity to hear what that would be like. So Natalie, I'm going to let you kick this off. And the first question that I have for you is, can you tell me a little bit about your current situation? So what sport you play, what year you're in school, position, playing time, etc.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you. So my name is Natalie. I'm a sophomore on the Davidson College Division I Field Hockey team. I'm from Haddonfield, New Jersey, which is like 10 minutes outside of Philadelphia. And as of right now, I am a forward and midfielder. Last year, I was specifically a forward, but this year I'm kind of doing a little bit of both. And since we haven't had a season in like a good year now, I'm not sure what my playing time will look like this season. But last season, I started every game as a freshman and played for a good majority of the game. So hopefully with our season coming up in the spring, I'll maybe have more of a concrete answer about my playing time. But for now, it's all still kind of up in the air.
Okay. So you've seen me look down at the screen, and I want to say something real quick to you because I should have said it before we started. It's just me taking notes. So don't think that I'm not paying attention to you.
You're good.
I think people get weirded out if you're staring into the camera anyway.
That's fine. You can do whatever you need to do. You're good.
Yeah. All right. So let's move on then, and let's talk a little bit. One of the places I like to start these conversations, and this is a discovery call between you and I, where I'm trying to get as much information as I can from you so that I can potentially help you in the ways that you want to be helped. That's the biggest thing. I don't want to tell you how I want to help you. I want to help you in the way that you want to be helped. So I use these as a guide, these questions, and to hopefully get as much information as possible. So the first area, we want to start by highlighting your strengths. We want to stay positive. We want to say, okay, Natalie, on the field, off the field, what are you doing well? Where can we keep doing good things on that end. So can you, off the
Yes.
top of your head, are there, 1, 2, 3 strengths that you want to talk about here?
Yes. So I think the first strength of mine is that I am definitely very positive. I tend to not get negative when I'm tired, or if I had a bad day. I always am more inclined to look at the positives. And obviously, I have my moments like everyone. But for the most part, I do have a very positive outlook on a lot of things. And then the second strength I can kind of think of is that I'm very self motivated and I'm very dedicated. So when COVID hit and we had to do a lot of training on our own, that didn't really impact me all that much, just because even when I am training with my team or with the group, I still do find that motivation within myself because I expect a lot for myself. So kind of a strength is that I almost compete with myself to be better almost every day or every time I do step out on the field. And then the last strength I could think of is that I'm definitely a people person. I love people. I have always been very good with people. And I have good communication skills. So whether that's confronting a teammate with a conflict or on the field in real time where you just kind of have 5 seconds to blurt something out to them and redirect them. But I do take pride in my communication skills, and I've found that that's something that's helped me a lot as a college athlete for sure.
Yeah, those are all really good things to start off with. And I can already just tell from our conversation that you're not really lying to me. And these things are true. And to what
Yes,
extent we'll figure out here, I guess, in the
right.
near future. But it is, I think, the biggest one that's standing out to me that I just want to talk through with you here real quick is
Yeah.
the ability to stay positive even when you're tired. And I think
Yes.
the distinction that's coming to mind for me, and this may help you on the field or even off the field when you're, I don't know, on a long trip or something like that in the
Right.
future when there's no COVID, but especially
Right.
on the field and in competition, there's something to be said about that person who's just bubbly and positive all the time, and it's all sunshine and rainbows, and you could tell it's
Yes.
fake,
Yes.
versus what it seems like what's coming off of you is you are trying to see the positive, and the fact that you can do it when you're tired, like that's when it gets to a lot of people, right? Like it's easy to be
Right.
positive, it's easy to be happy when you've had
Right.
a good night's sleep, when you have a full
Yes.
stomach, when things are going well. But when things don't go
Right.
well, then it's easy to turn. And I could just see that, like in the middle of competition, like you said, sometimes you only have like a few seconds to either
Right.
communicate something to someone or whatever the situation is, and I can just see you being that person to say like, all right, it sucks right now, but it's gonna
Yes.
be better. Like it's
Yes.
going to
Yes.
be okay, and we're going to get
Yes.
through that. And like I think that's probably a very special attribute that we can take from this conversation and really build on from here.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I think that is something I kind of did have to learn and train myself. Like I think all of these strengths, some of them come naturally. Like from the day I was born, my mom was like, I just was a talker. I would never shut up when I was a baby. So there's my communication skills, and I'm a people person. But I think I used to like feel the need like, oh, this situation sucks. I'm just going to act like it doesn't suck and not acknowledge that it sucks and
Yeah.
just continue to be positive. But I think I've grown as me individually, like, okay, yes, we're going to address the elephant in the room. We're losing 7-0, and that is a very crappy feeling, but there are positives to be taken from that. So definitely not sugarcoating, but still trying to like keep everyone in a good headspace has definitely become a strength of mine.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, I love
yeah,
it.
definitely.
You're walking the line between being a realist versus being a Debbie Downer, right? Like,
Right.
just
Absolutely.
just letting
Yes.
it roll in the mud and get worse from
Right.
there. So
Yes, for sure.
yeah. Awesome. All right. So we have a lot of really great strengths that we can build on. And that's really important because now we're going to move to the harder question. And
Right.
objectively, I think it's harder for people to admit weaknesses or to even find weaknesses because I mean, who wants to know they have any weaknesses, right? Or challenge
Yeah.
areas. So
Yeah.
I gave you these questions in advance, and hopefully you've had some time to at least think about it. But again, is
Hmm.
there one or two at least that we can start with to say like, hey, this is something that, and it's not to say like you're the worst person in the world at this, but
Right.
where can we
Right.
help you fill in a gap here with a challenge area or an area of weakness?
Yeah, for sure. So I thought of three. The first is that because I'm very self-motivated, I also am very self-critical. So I am typically my biggest critic. So I am very hard on myself and I have very high expectations of myself. And when I fall short of that, I do get extremely frustrated. But definitely working on coping skills with that. And then the second thing is that I am extremely extroverted, kind of to the point where I perform according to my feelings. So let's say I just had a great day and I'm feeling good and everything's going great. I'm out on the field, I'm happy, I'm doing well when I feel good. And then the other side of that is if I'm not playing well or I did have a bad day, I keep my mindset positive, but what I'm actually doing on the field tends to not be as productive or as good as it could be. And I also am a very passionate and emotional player that kind of comes along with that. And that can be my greatest strength because I never give up and I'm like not afraid. Like I'll always go for the big moments, even if they're not the right things to do. I just kind of go with my gut. But at the same time, that does kind of take away some of the technical skills, or my coach will be like, what the heck are you doing? Like, stop. So I definitely kind of play to my gut and what I think is right. And then the third thing I kind of thought of is that I'm not very good at saying no to people. This applies to my sport and also just in general life. And I'm very much a people pleaser. So if someone asks me to do something and it's something I don't want to do, I don't really consider that it's something I don't want to do. I'm just like, well, they'll be happy. They asked me to do it. And I always end up saying yes. So those are kind of the three weaknesses I thought of for sure.
Yeah, and I just want to commend you for having the self-awareness to talk about those things and
Yeah.
identify them in the first place too.
Yeah.
And I think that they're all areas that can be fixed or however you want to say it.
Yeah.
And I think like the biggest things for the most part, the passion and all that, they're good things. And I could see where it gets in the
Right.
way sometimes and it can be a detriment. So I think, energy management is going to be something
Right.
that we maybe need to
Absolutely.
talk about. The
Yes.
self-critical, hard on self, I can totally relate to that. That's who
Right.
I am in a nutshell.
Yeah.
So I've
Yes.
had to do a lot of work on that myself, and we can certainly talk about that. And then the part with not being able to say no, I'm glad you said yes
Mhm.
to this opportunity. But
This is something I would love to do, but
yeah,
some
well,
things not so much.
right, right. Well, I think what could be helpful, not just now when you're in school and you have a million different things that you could be doing, but even as you get out of school, you graduate, you go on with your adult life. My wife and I were actually just talking about this the other day on a walk, where
Yeah.
she defined the three things that were most important to her, like literally wrote it out. And I'm thinking
Right.
about the notebook that I'm going to send to you and that I'm going to recommend that everybody uses on one-on-one sessions, or if it's a team setting, whatever it is. And there's that goal area right in your notebook where you write down, what things are important to you. And I think that helps you. It doesn't make it any easier to say no, right? But
Right.
it can at least help you identify those areas where you can be saying no because they're not
Yes.
taking you toward where you're trying to get. So
Absolutely. Yeah.
that's what I think, ultimately is going to help you the most there, or at least one of the things that can help you there
Right. For
um,
sure.
with that. So good things there. I don't want to spend too
Yeah.
much time because I want to get through as much as we can with you, but
Yes.
I did want to say that. Now, I asked you to define some goals, and I
Yes.
wrote down to, if you could, make them SMART goals. If not, let's just talk about goals in general. But do you
Okay.
have a few short-term goals that we can start with and then move into long-term goals that we can talk about on this call today?
Yes. So some short-term goals was kind of branching off of what we were just talking about, was learning to say no to things I don't want to do. So not necessarily a SMART goal, but I was thinking of kind of like evaluating at the end of each week, was I taking on extra opportunities and were they things that I enjoyed doing? And if not, kind of cutting the cord with those things.
Sure.
And then another short-term goal I have is becoming a master of playing under pressure, and imitating pressure during my training. So right now we're in our stage of preseason where we're not allowed to have contact with each other. So all of our drills are 6 feet apart. We're not doing 1v1s. So it's sometimes hard to get that pressure when there's not a teammate or a defender right on you. So learning to execute in the circle while under pressure, getting shots towards the cage. And then another short-term goal was kind of more related to my schoolwork, but once the semester starts, reviewing my notes each day for 20 minutes. So by the time I get to exams, I don't have to cram, and little things like that end up helping me mentally, physically, and in my sport when I'm not spending 10 hours studying for one exam when I could have just done 10 minutes each night.
Yeah.
But those are my short-term goals.
Yeah. And I think the become a master of playing under pressure is a great line. Would make a
Thank
great
you.
song
Yeah.
as well, I'm
Yeah.
sure.
Thanks. I know.
And it's really interesting in these times too, because not only are you trying to replicate pressure because you want to be able to perform in those situations when a lot of people
Right.
can't, but I think in general, people are struggling to replicate energy within their
Yes.
surroundings because
Yes.
I mean, it depends on the sport, how close you are usually, and how much communication is going on, and those different things.
Right.
So it's a lot different from your vantage point as a field hockey player than it is for somebody who's playing softball, for example.
Right.
And
Right.
but I think still that being able to just create the baseline energy that you would feel in a normal
Yes.
situation is one thing, and then
Yes.
to your point, like we want to amplify that even more
Right.
and say like, okay,
Exactly.
this is the national championship and
Right.
everything's on the line. I need to come through, so I want to have
Exactly.
practice this scenario, not just in my head, but as accurately as I guess I can in real life,
Yes.
with everything.
Definitely.
Very cool.
Yes.
So yeah, very interesting short-term goals, and I like how you threw in the academics too, because that, as you said, it affects not just your well-being as a human being, but it affects you
Right.
on the field as well, and that's
Yeah,
really important part to all of this. So, uh,
for sure.
good with that. Do you have any long-term goals that you want to talk about?
Yes.
Okay.
So my long-term goal is my team going to the A10 tournament. So that's kind of a long-term goal for my entire team. I'm definitely not alone in having that long-term goal, which is definitely comforting. But that's kind of where our eyes are on the prize right now. So that's our goal.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And I know little insider info just from talking
Yes.
to your coaches that this is a goal, and it's just really interesting to think about how different individual goals are from team goals, but how much the
Yes.
individual effort matters toward achieving
Right.
that team goal. Like it's just a really
Absolutely.
interesting parallel there, I guess.
For sure. Yeah, totally.
Yeah. All right. So let's move on to talking a little bit about leadership. I only put this question in here because I want to get a sense of what type of leader you want to be. And
Yes.
not everybody needs to be like the rah-rah leader. Not everybody needs to be the lead by example, like that. I'm talking like
Right.
the A level leader.
Right.
You can lead in so many different ways. And the way that
Yes.
we're going to help amplify that a little bit more, if you're not already doing it, is to say,
Yeah.
okay, what does leadership mean to you, Natalie? So I
Yes.
asked you to define leadership, and I'd love to hear what your definition of it is.
Yes. So my definition of leadership, this took me a while to think of everything that I feel encompasses leadership. But eventually I came up with motivating people towards a common goal through positivity, encouragement, and leading through voice and example. And I kind of found that the main purpose of leadership is to motivate others and to make others feel good and capable in their own skills. So I am definitely a vocal leader for sure, but I also think that leading by example is really important too.
Excellent. Can you repeat the back end of I got motivating people to common goal through positivity?
Yes, encouragement, motivation, and vocally and by example.
All right. I want to make sure I get
Yes,
all of that
no, you're
down
fine.
so that when we start to talk a little bit more about this and we unwrap it a little bit more, I want to make sure that we're covering everything. And I know you've got it written
Yeah,
down and right there for you. But I think that it's interesting, your leadership, it matches who you are, right? Like it
right,
matches that you're a positive person and
right.
that you're like my wife in a lot of ways, where my wife
Yeah,
wants everybody to see the good in them at
yes,
all times.
yes,
Like even if they're the
yes,
worst person in the world,
right.
she's like,
Yes,
there's some good there. So
yes, I am that way too.
yeah,
Yes, for sure.
yeah, really, really special attribute. And I think that it's super easy in competitive sports to get away from that. So I think there
Yeah,
needs to be people like you who can
right.
bring people back to just feeling good about themselves, but
Yes,
also
for
using that
sure.
as a way to help them understand their capability and their skills. So really, really interesting definition. I like that a lot.
Thank you. Thanks.
Sorry to interrupt, but I want to help you get fit. Christine here from Sweat with Sods. Being at home has a lot of people in a rut with their workouts, but you don't have to be. My HIIT at home workouts require no equipment and can be done in 30 minutes or less. And if HIIT isn't for you, I also design custom programs that can be done virtually, in person, or a combination of both. I put my years of experience teaching classes and personal training into all of my programs. I've worked with lots of people and helped them achieve very different goals. So what are you waiting for? Head to sweatwithsods.com today. And don't forget that as a listener to this podcast, you can get a discount with code DYNAMIC at checkout. Can't wait to hear from you. And now, back to the show.
I have this question in here because I don't want to make any assumptions. It
Yes.
seems like leadership is important to you and that
Yeah,
is something that you aspire to do, but we're just going to
right.
quite simply, or I'm going to quite simply ask you here, do you want to be a leader? And
Yeah.
I think I wanted to put why or why not there, and I had a
Yeah,
little
yeah, no,
typo.
you're
So
fine. Yeah, no, you're good. Yes, I do want to be a leader. Something on my team that's unique, is along with captains, we also have a leadership council. And the way that works, it's actually kind of a funny story, but we all were taken into a room during a team meeting. This was last year, pre-COVID, and we all sat within our classes. So I was a freshman at the time. My entire freshman class, sophomore class, junior class, senior class, and our coaches said, you have 10 minutes to all decide who is the leader of your class and who therefore will be on leadership council. And we want you to hash it out in real time and vote in front of each other. So you know who's voting for you, you know who you're voting for. There's really no hiding behind like a survey or anything.
wow.
And it eventually came down to one of my best friends who she was assigning between her roommate or me. It was like 3-3. She was a tiebreaker, and she quite literally was having a panic attack. The whole team was waiting for her answer. And I felt terrible for her, but eventually I was nominated to be leadership council of my class. And I think that I really love that role, because I think I know everyone on my team well enough that I understand what motivates everyone specifically. And I try to play to that when I'm speaking with them individually or when we're in a 1v1 setting. But in terms of like motivating my team or a large group, I always err on the side of motivating through positivity and encouragement, all these buzzwords that I've already talked about, opposed to posing like ultimatums or like, if we don't make this percent of these shots, like we suck, or like, obviously no one would ever say that, but like I always err on the side of making people feel good, because I think that when people feel good, they play well and they're confident in what they're contributing. So that's always been my motto, is just the better you make those around you feel, the better results we'll get as a team and as a program. And even our team culture too is impacted by that. But yes, definitely do want to be a leader, and definitely strive to do that every day.
Yeah, awesome. And it's great to know that you're on the council. You are actively already involved in some of the work that we could potentially be talking about and doing. So
Right.
it's great that you're already there. And I would look forward to learning more about what goes into those council meetings and those discussions
Yeah.
that you have with your players, with your coaches,
Yeah.
all that good stuff definitely is going to, I think, help further the conversations here in the future.
Yes.
All right.
Absolutely.
So everything that we've talked about has been up to this point, leading up, I think, to talking a little bit more about the culture and the environment that you envision for your team. And
Right.
I asked this question because when I define culture, I did this in my book. I do it literally every single time I'm talking to somebody. Culture is simply the experience that you have with the people you're surrounded by.
Yes.
That's what culture is. You can have all the buzzwords you want, core values,
Right.
blah, blah, blah. But what people are going to remember is the experience that they had. So
For sure.
from your perspective, have you given any thought toward when you're a sophomore now, potentially an extra year of eligibility with COVID in the future, but at the very least, probably 2 more years before you're
Right.
moving on from Davidson? What do you want to be a part of now, and what do you want the program to be like when you leave? Have you given thought to that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I do have to say that our culture and environment as of right now is very healthy. My teammates and coaches are extremely supportive of one another. And something that is really unique is that everyone on my team are best friends. And like, I know a lot of teams say like, we're all best friends, but I genuinely cannot think of one person on the team who I wouldn't confide in or ask for advice, or someone who I wouldn't be comfortable hanging out with one-on-one, or whatever the situation would be. So I think that is wonderful. And there's so many great things that come out of that. Something that I want my team and our program to strive for in terms of our culture is it could definitely become more competitive. So since we are all so close, it's sometimes hard to make that distinction between your best friends off the field and your teammates on the field. So sometimes it's hard to tell your best friend who you're going to go sleep with and shower with and eat dinner with, like, hey, I need a better pass from you, or you need to get it together. We have a game and we need to win. Like, sometimes those conversations are really hard to have because we've already established like we are best friends. We will do anything for each other. So I think we do, and we've had these conversations. This is something that our team is very aware of, but I think we need to kind of be more conscious of making the distinction of we are best friends, but we also are teammates working towards a goal. And there are sacrifices and hard conversations that need to be had to make our goals happen. So definitely finding the fine line between those two things. And I've tried, and like, I'll be buddy buddy. We were walking all to practice together. We're best friends. We're laughing. And then I'm like, okay, I'm on the field. I'm going to kind of shut that off and treat everyone as teammates. And it's really hard. Like, it lasts for about a good 5 minutes, and then you're laughing with your best friends about how they tripped and fell. Like, it's really hard to get into that like mindset. But it definitely would make our team more competitive for sure.
Yeah, and you said it perfectly. I mean, you're not off base with any of this. You're walking a thin line, a fine line. How do you stay best friends and not alienate the other party? or get them to shut down, or
For sure.
even worse, quit or transfer, something like that. And I think, and again, this will be an area where we can continue to do more work, but what's coming to mind is you talk about being best friends, and that's not a phrase that I hear as often as like family, right? People say we're like a family, but they're the same things to me. And what I always tell people is, when you have a healthy family and you've identified that your culture is healthy, and to what extent, I'm not exactly sure, but it's a healthy culture. And when you have a healthy family, a healthy best friend relationship, you're able to have difficult conversations and find a way to work through those difficult conversations rather than avoid them or try to work around them. And so that's always where I think I end up doing the most coaching myself, is to say, okay, you want to be a family, but you don't want to have family-like conversations, then we need to talk about this a little bit more. And it's the same thing I think that you're struggling with right now, is to say like, okay, we are best friends, but I don't want to piss you off. I don't want to make you mad, but you have to, it's almost like you have to think about it 5 years from now. Like, if you don't have the conversation now, and then 5 years from now, your best friend comes to you and she's like, why didn't you say this to me then? Like, why did you let me do this for another 5 years? Like, she's going to be even more pissed off at you then than she's going to be right now. And that's when I gave a keynote, excuse me, on having difficult conversations. And I said, one of the key things that comes from having a difficult conversation is it alleviates the pain point. Like, it could make it disappear completely if you just say something versus just continuing to fester and be there in the background and everything. So I know it's easier said than done. I totally realize that, but it's not impossible to get what you're trying to accomplish. And I think you're totally right. If you're able to hold people accountable, if they're making bad passes, if they're being too lax at practice, if there's, you want to have fun. But if you're holding people accountable, that will make you more competitive. And that's what you want. And I think that's probably what everyone wants too, it seems like.
Exactly. Yes, for sure. Yeah.
All right, cool. So we got a couple minutes here left before all these calls go about 20 or 30 minutes, just depending on how much conversation that we're having in between some of these questions. But essentially, I want to hop to the last question here and see if you have any questions for me about how we could potentially work together in the future. Anything that we didn't cover today that you were hoping to talk about too, we could cover here real quick. I can take a note of, but this is your chance just to ask me any questions or make sure that I get some information on something that we haven't covered that you were hoping to talk about.
Yeah, absolutely. So for the future, I think some of the things that I definitely need to work on is definitely energy management, which you kind of brought up in the beginning.
Sure.
My coaches always say to me, like, your energy is one of your most special and unique attributes, but there's also a time where sometimes you need to be able to turn it off and control it. It can also be my biggest enemy. So definitely energy management. And then what we were just kind of talking about at the end, learning to have those tough conversations and kind of finding the balance between showing you care through accountability and showing that you're almost best friends enough that you care enough to say the hard things and have those hard conversations. Those are definitely topics that I would love to elaborate on in the future.
All righty. Any questions for me before I let you go today on anything else?
I think I'm all good. Thank you so much for having me. This is awesome.
Yeah, well, thank you, Natalie. And again, this was more of a mock conversation, so people could get an idea of what a conversation like this would be like if they decide to enter into a one-on-one working relationship with the Talent 409 Leadership Academy. So I appreciate you taking some time before your busy season gets started here, and fingers crossed there's no interruptions, but can't wait to see all the progress that you continue to make. And we're always here, especially me for you. I'm always here as a resource. If you ever need anything, don't hesitate. Okay.
Thank you so much.